Freddy's back! The Nightmares on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger's 7 Sweetest Dreams. A collection of 7 short stories based on Freddy Krueger. Each time I do an upload of this book, it'll be one individual short story from this book. Here we go. Introduction. Mysterious deaths haunt Springwood. Springwood, 1991. Though purged of the serial killer known as the Springwood Slasher, the city of Springwood has been visited recently with numerous grisly deaths of unexplained natures. Previously, Springwood was victimized by Freddy Krueger, a serial killer popularized in print and film. The true Krueger closely approximates the popular legend, conceived when Amanda Krueger was raped by the denizens of the Springwood Mental Asylum. Freddy Krueger was raised by a series of brutal foster parents before beginning a life on the city streets. His modus operandi consisted of slashing victims to death with a glove fitted with razor blades on each finger. Most of the murders occurred in a boiler room of the generator plant where Krueger worked as a maintenance man. Krueger was brought to trial, but eluded conviction on a technicality in a search warrant used to obtain evidence. After escaping conviction, Krueger died in a fire allegedly set by vigilante mob. Numerous witnesses testified to his death, and a body was recovered from the remains of his Springwood residence on Elm Street. However, unexplained deaths continue to haunt the vicinity of Elm Street. Authorities offer no explanations but insist the connection between Freddy Krueger and the current rash of death is purely coincidental. According to Police Lieutenant Alvin Kramer, there is no, I repeat, no conceivable way of connecting these deaths with Freddy, except in the wildest dreams of some two-bit reporter. Officer Kramer, when pressed, refused to clarify this statement. The investigations into the recent deaths continue. Close my eyes and I'll kiss you. A short story by Wayne Allen Sally. That's what he told me. Those exact words. Close my eyes and the rest. Just like that. He wanted me to kill him. The guy is on death row, and word has it that he'll be the first execution in Illinois since before I was born. Almost. The whole thing is absurd. For months now, Wexler has been avoiding any publicity, fired a succession of lawyers, and generally wanted nothing to do with the process of appeals. Vinnie Wexler wanted the whole thing to end. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life getting fucked up his rosy red by the gangbanger with the most unfiltered cigarettes. Thing was, it was like 99% sure that he was going to get the death room. The governor doesn't give a flying fuck through a drug house door slit what Wexler does. Probably has a lot to do with him not running for office again. Things like capital punishment and abortion and cable TV in the colored neighborhoods of Chicago, those issues don't concern him anymore. The papers are saying how shrewd he is. Being calm is some kind of ploy. He's an attention getter, they say. Well, all I can say is that a condemned man who asks a fellow prisoner to kill him is either stupid or cowardly. And Wexler ain't stupid. I mean, what is so shrewd about dying? 26 January 1990. Wexler woke up screaming again. Maybe the guilt's getting to him. Like he's dreaming about the boy and girl he tied to a tree and shot after taking their money to buy beer. Thing is, I don't recall. I mean, it has been about 4 years since he killed them, but I don't really remember that. The boy's name was Freddy. Kevin it was, or maybe Eddie. But I know that the kid he killed was not named Freddy. What do you think about this, Leland? Rizzy asked his partner after he had finished radioing for some texts from the lab unit. The 2 1st District cops had caught the body found call toward the end of their shift. Always something like that. Never anything easy to close out the day. Lab boys will be here directly, Leland said. The black-haired cop had just enough of a donut belly that the desk clerk at the hotel wasn't intimidated in the least. Leland had a sharp chin that had a cleft the size of a Wells blowhole. And what do I think about what? This. Rizzy handed the small journal to Leland, his handkerchief keeping it free from any additional prints. It was on the guy's bed, back in the room. Leland put his left glove on before flipping the pages. He let the spiral-bound canary yellow pages fall back to page 1. First entry was 10 months ago. The cover has a number 5 written on it. Rizzy stretched his arms and scratched the back of his head. His hair was cut in a buzz like a Marine. Everyone, including the punks they picked up and rousted, wondered if Rizzy's brain froze in the winter months. But read what he says about Vincent Wexler. Vincent Wexler, Leland replied. The guy that was executed in September? Go on, read. Rizzy glanced over his partner's shoulder after he turned the first page. I'm glad I've been keeping journals since my incarceration date. No one believed me when I said I'd be publishing my prison memoirs, or trying to at least. We'll see who laughs after Wexler's execution. The way he's been talking, I'm surprised the screws here haven't leaked anything to the press. I mean, Wexler's a real Fruit Loop. He shows up in the laundry room for shift with his eyes all sunk in, like there's part of his head inside's missing. Man don't even shave anymore. Used to have this waxed handlebar mustache. Now it's all every which way and reminds me of a dog fur that's been drooled on. When I ask him what's wrong, he mumbles something about this guy named Freddy he keeps having nightmares about. I told him about this guy Otis. I keep having bad dreams about, usually involving the shower, but Wexler didn't even crack a smile. I was kidding about that Otis thing, too. I'd fuck him. That's why I'm in here in the first place. I'll fuck anything that moves. Age don't really matter. These guys were a couple of homo fags. Leland looked up from the book. What the fuck's keeping that crime unit? He asked rhetorically. Rizzy was impatient for him to turn the page. You gonna keep reading? What for? This whole thing is about 2 guys and their wet dreams. A Ravenswood train rumbled by on the elevated tracks above Van Buren. The second-floor room was close enough that the bed shook like it had a magic fingers box attached. The corpse vibrated on the floor and looked as if it was trying to shake its head, or maybe get some of the still wet blood out of its open eyes. The dead man was Nick Fornix, and the manager of the Hotel Rialto discovered the body after one of the SRO's residents complained about the man in 2G banging on the radiator pipes. Jesus, bald-headed Christ, the manager had said. I was ready to pop the guy. It's only October. See, I don't charge for utilities. He smiled proudly and let go with a phlegmy cough. Isn't that freaking cold outside? But seeing that he's dead, well, the manager shrugged, scratched his ass, and pointed to the second-floor stairwell. Rizzy looked back and saw the man smelling his fingers. The writing matches the name in the front desk ledger, Rizzy said. Maybe there's something here to tell us why he did a duchy. You really think it's a suicide? Guy had to have stones to bang his... Leland stopped as the crime scene unit finally showed, followed by Assistant NME Burvid. We'll get out of your way, boys, Rizzy said, nodding a hello to Burvid, who he knew from 2 winters ago, when the painkiller was chopping up men in wheelchairs. Leland brought the dog-eared notebook out with him. They read more of the journal, this time Rizzy holding the book. Behind him, the police photographer did a dance around the corpse, capturing every angle on film. All he's talking about is Wexler and Freddy, whoever he is, Leland said. Think that's one of his victims we don't know about? Could be. Wexler was from East St. Louis, and the Crawford County Sheriff picked him up in Bel Air, so that leaves the length of downstate open for conjecture. Vincent Eugene Wexler wasn't a psycho serial killer. He was an unemployed booze hound who robbed Edward Matheny and Nancy Dote of $40 because he had run out of bourbon. The couple had been fishing on the bank of the Wabash River, and when Matheny said he recognized Wexler, he tied them both to trees and shot each of them in the head. He was arrested an hour later in Oblong after causing a disturbance outside of a tavern. Wexler was incarcerated in July of 1986 and received a death sentence in April of the following year. Death row in Illinois meant nothing, but cops knew, because there hadn't been a single execution since the Supreme Court reinstated the death penalty in 1976. In January, the last appeals of Wexler's attorney had run out, and the killer was telling the court he wanted to die, just about the time Fornix was writing about in his little notebook. I guess I bugged the shit out of Wexler enough that he finally told me who Freddy is. The guy's a Fruit Loop after all. We're in the laundry room, and Wexler's just about falling over from carrying this duffel bag of prisoner's clothing. I made him drop it and sit on it, then stuck my foot on his crotch until he told me why he was getting so sick-like. Wish I hadn't bothered. The guy is Fruit Loops, like I said. About a month ago, it was just after Christmas, Wexler said he started having the dreams. The two teens he dusted, they're still tied around the trees. He goes up to see if maybe another couple of bullets are needed. He goes up to the girl first. You'd think the guy would at least grab her titty or something. In his dream, or in real life, I mean. Her blonde hair is all matted down by the blood, and her body is slumped forward against the ropes. Just as he gets up to her, he said he even smelled her chantilly perfume in his dream. Her eyes snap open, and she smiles at him. Her lips are blue from death, and she says to him, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. Then her dead boyfriend chimes in with 5, 6, grab your crucifix. There are more, but I can't recall other than it had to do with this Freddy dude coming out of the closet or something. Shit, he'd have to be gay as Wexler. Had her right there and didn't even take a peek up her pussy. Now, that was right around New Year's when that was going on. I don't rightly recall him screaming at night until right around the 8th. I know because it was Elvis's birthday. The guy's story wasn't making him a Looney Tune yet, and I really get into that dream interpretation stuff, like how the L train in the loop is your dick being shoved up your own ass over and over again. So I listened to him some more when shift ended, and we had an hour where we watched TV in the mess hall. It was a Sunday, and the guards always put on America's Most Wanted, which makes me laugh to no end. So Wexler tells me who this Freddy is. The guy's full name was Fred Krueger, and he made lunch meat out of a shitload of kids in the Midwest. Stafford, Springwood, along those lines. Mean little short eyes, the way he described it. Guy had a glove with blades in it, and a burned face that even a mother couldn't love. I asked him, I says, what, did they serve time together or something? See, Wexler was downstate in Menard until the appeals ended, and they brought him up on to Joliet because that's where the execution chamber be. When Wexler filled me in on that, I thought, shit, what a Fruit Loop. No wonder he wants someone to kill him. I was surprised he hadn't asked the governor himself to do him in. Here's his story. Freddy Krueger's dead, gone, worm food. Some of the parents whose kids he had gotten to chase him down to a school or warehouse, something like that. Wexler wasn't being too coherent, see. They set the place on fire, and he burned to death. About 5 years later, as Wexler says, Freddy was brought back to life to get revenge on those who killed him. I said, right, I believe you. And did you know my girlfriend in New Lenox can grow up to 50 feet tall, and I use her twat as a water slide? That shut Wexler up. But I wasn't sorry I said it at all. Wexler's been giving me the silent treatment the past few days. Today he was his old self again. Whether that was an improvement, I don't rightly know. His prison uniform hangs from him like rags on a street person back in the windy. Not that he ever had a delectable ass, but the way his pants hang off of him, it looks more like a pack of flat shit where his bun should be. I took a chance and asked him if maybe he was feeling better because the prison gave him some Salmonex. He laughed like a man filing bankruptcy for the second time. Wexler told me that he was trying to stay awake all night, not fall asleep, you see. He had no trouble with that. What it was, Freddy Krueger came to him in his nightmares. Was any of this shit in the newspapers? Do you remember? Rizzy asked his partner. Not that I know of, Leland said. Wexler wasn't born again, nothing like that. How did he put it? I just want it all to be over. Bastard shipbird. Did he think the death was going to end it for the families? The guy had no remorse. None at all. Rizzy flipped to the next page. The boys from the lab were dusting the radiator and seals for prints. Burvid, the assistant ME, was bending over the skull, keeping count on his fingers. 3 February 1990. Wexler tells me he hasn't had nightmares for over a week. I think he's spineless is all. Haunted by ghosts, that's all. Me, I don't show remorse. There's this one girl, Rebecca something from the north side. Whenever I dream about her plump little ass, I wake up with a woody. 14 February 1990. Well, shit. Now the guy has me getting nightmares. I dreamed I woke up and heard Wexler down the hall arguing with someone. Well, with Freddy. The dude in my dream was laughing and hissing at Wexler with his deep, gravelly voice. I thought the voice either sounded like Hulk Hogan doing a pro wrestling promo, brother, or the bad cop part of the Mutt and Jeff team that shows up in the interrogation room at county lockup. I remember most of the talking they did because that's how clear my dreams are, you see. Sometimes I end up with a few good alibis I can use later. Freddy wished Wexler a happy Valentine's Day and tossed something like a wet head of lettuce to the floor. Wexler was saying on how he wanted to be left alone. Freddy told him that the guy was a spineless alcoholic. Too drunk to live, too drunk to die. Wexler was stuttering and saying that he hadn't cut the girl's head off, he'd only shot her. He wasn't going to be frightened by the severed head Freddy had tossed at him. But it sure as hell seemed that he was to me. I mean, Wexler didn't stutter for as long as I've known him. And when we talked on things about the outside, Wexler told me he never even slurred his words when he was falling down drunk. Freddy started laughing again, this deep guttural sound. Then I heard this sound like metal scraping against metal, worse than fingernails on a chalkboard. Wexler started screaming, but it was cut off like like Freddy had covered up his mouth. I heard that sound again with Freddy laughing as well and thought it really sounded like a car doing 90, cutting it too close to the guardrail. Wexler didn't show up in the laundry shop today. I heard talk that the guards sedated him heavily. He cut himself up or something. I bet they don't say a word of this to the press because all the screws are itchy to see someone get the black needle. I mean, shit. They hate each and every one of us that we have to be alive for another day. If word got out about Wexler's stories, hell, if they found out he had asked me to kill him, the execution would be off for sure. 16 February 1990. Wexler was no-show again. I hear they've got him on suicide watch. I'm reading my journal entries as I go along, and last night I had this dream of my own. I let little Rebecca live a few days longer this time and woke up round dawn with my dick sticking up higher than Aunt Jemima's pancakes. I fell back asleep before the 7 wake-up and dreamed about this Freddy character. I pictured him as a tan surfer type wearing red wrestling trunks and a leather police jacket. He was watching me give it to the girl and cheering me on. When I had dropped my goo, Freddy stepped over the girl to shake my hand. Only when our hands touched, those blades came out of the knuckles in this kind of wrestling glove he wore, and the metal was rusted with blood. Never letting go of my hand, Freddy grinned as the blades went into my right forearm as easily as a fork through a shrink wrapper. The girl on the ground started screaming, and Freddy put his foot into her mouth. Now you can't say you got no soul, babe! He laughed, and I saw for the first time how crooked and yeller his teeth was. He grinned at me, still not letting go of my hands. Your dreams are a lot tastier than Wexler's, he hissed. He just dreams about liquor. And Freddy waggled his hideous, matted tongue. It's really not quicker. He let go of my hand. We were still connected by the blades under my skin. Freddy smiled. Wexler dreams about the big black needle and thinks he's going to get away from me. But he doesn't have a ticket to ride. He's got a ticket to die. Then he pulled his right hand up like he was fending off an invisible blow. The blades ripped straight out of my arm, and I was able to see my tibia from 2 different angles, I tell you, before the blood welled around and it spurted onto the girl on the floor. Aspie Spamonti! Catch you later, bitch! Freddy waved the dripping blades at me before he stepped through the cell wall. Pleasant dreams! I woke up sweating and I had the Hershey squirts in my pants. The last time that had happened was after my initiation fuck 2 years back. If this recollection with the girl is real, Rizzy said to an audience now, after Leland began reading that last entry aloud, then he's a killer. What the hell is he doing out on the streets? Those gathered around him included the lab boys and 2 more beat patrolmen, just starting their 3 to 11 shift. Maybe it's bullshit, Constant, one of the cops, offered. Guy was stir crazy, the other cop, Christopher, said. He and Wexler probably smoked each other's dicks, and the guy was getting nighttime thigh sweats because he knew Wexler was going to get the needle. Still, Rizzy said. Constant, why don't you and Ben drive back to 11th and get this guy's rap sheet? We'll radio it in so they'll have the printout as fast as possible. He looked over at Burvid. What do you think? The wounds are self-inflicted, it looks like, the assistant ME said. It's been a slow week, so I'll get to the autopsy as soon as I get back to Harrison. Slow week, huh? Leland's facial tic drew the right side of his mouth back. Relatively, Burvid said. Such a small voice, but he stood at 6'3". He towered above the other men, several of whom were standing in the doorframe, something the coroner could not do without scrunching down. Just a bunch of drive-by shootings between the insane unknowns and the Haddon Cobras. Same shit, different day. No one comes to identify a gangbanger. It's no skin off my scalpel. 22 February 1990. Wexler begged me to kill him again. I told him to forget it. The whole thing was making me pissed off. Just like that guy down in Florida crying like a baby when it was time to get jerked to Jesus. Hell, there hasn't been an execution in Illinois since 1962. They got guys on death row here and down at Murnard Correctional that scare the shit out of me. That guy who dressed as a clown and buried the homos in his crawl space. The I-57 murderer. A big black motherfucker who made a woman climb naked through a barbed wire fence and then shot her in the neck and left her hanging there. That guy Speck who killed those nurses or something or other. So now he's having nightmares because his appeals are up. The guy goes and tells the press that he wants to die, and now he's scared. Wants me to smother him with the laundry. Shit, if he wants to go so fast, I'll put his head in the goddamn steam press. I don't really know what he's so damn scared of. It's not like he's gonna get the electric chair. State law is death by lethal injection. I done read up on it. Sodium pentothal is a fast-acting barbiturate, pancrenonium bromide to stop his breathing, and potassium chloride to stop his heart. What's he so jumped up about, man? The whole thing is a piece of cake, compared to frying. They won't even have to shave his head. It'll be like falling asleep. Christ knows the guy hasn't done enough of that lately. The cops stood around, reading the macabre journal, waiting around for Christopher and Constant to return, with the deceased rap sheet. Fascinated by the writing, it gave some insight into Wexler's desire to die. Second-hand glimpses into his last days, which were not revealed in the Tribune or Sun-Times. Plus, one of the lab boys was kind enough to run down to the Dill Pickle and bring them up a couple of roast beef sandwiches with extra mayo. Most of the later entries were dull and had little to do with Wexler. Then one page jumped out at them, about midway through July. The script was erratic and reminded both Rizzy and Leland of correspondences found in serial killers' bedrooms after their sprees were brought to an end. I'm shaking like a fucking fresh meat in the shower. Been 8 fucking hours now and I don't have any cigarettes. Had to cut my forehead by hitting my head on the bars of my cell. I still want to think it's some crazy fucking nightmare. No wonder Wexler wants to die. My God, no wonder. It happened in the laundry room. Freddy Krueger, Jesus Christ almighty. Wexler comes in looking happy as a dick on velvet, says he hasn't been dreaming at all. Eating his 3 squares and feeling good with a month to go before the big nowhere. Man, my heart is racing. So he's wheeling the cart loaded with laundry. He's got plastic gloves on because a couple dozen assholes here have tested positive for the AIDS. But there ain't no place to send them. He's taking a cig break and I came over to talk some shit. All of a sudden the laundry bag starts moving around. Something bulging on the inside, like it was someone hiding to make a break out of a Starsky and Hutch rerun or some shit. The cart is up against the wall so it doesn't go sliding anywhere. At first I'm thinking the cloth is being pushed out like a tent because it was somebody's fist. Then Wexler screamed that it was Freddy Krueger's face, and I look and see the impressions of a nose and chin. Right then, there was a couple of points sticking out just to the right of the face, and I realized that it was those knives sticking out of his hand, like in my dream in Wexler's dreams. And then the cloth, boy, it tore and sounded like a sick Rottweiler dog, and then his face pushed through the 4 slashes. And this big grinning face said, I swear to God, he said, you'll look better in a sweater washed in woolite. Now there were 2 others working the shift, Plichta and some new fish whose name I never knew. I'm staring at them a minute. They work like they don't even know what's going on. But I understand now the real power that Fred Krueger has over his world and how it affects ours. Krueger's out of the bag, and how could I ever think he looked like a wrestler or a surfer? The sweater he was wearing fit his jingle if woolite was made out of blood and turpentine and dog hairs. He had a brim hat covering a face so scarred that he could make the Batman's arch enemy, the Joker, look like a Chip and Dale. So he starts in on what a wimp Wexler is, having to tie up 2 kids before he could kill them. You little alcoholic, you, Krueger said, waving his fingers. They catch up with John and find 33 boys in his crawl space. On a fluke! You, they find because you're beating up a Captain Fantastic pinball game. That voice, his face was all burn tissue, but he sounded like he'd been buried with his mouth open and the gravel was still down there in those lungs. I'm glad you like to play games, Wexler. His laugh sent chill blades down into my scrotum. Do you like handball? Oh, I like it, but I call it glove ball. Blades. He lifted up his arms and I saw this glove that fit him kind of like the Scarecrow in Oz, but it was dark brown or black. At the second knuckle, 4 blades came out of the glove, and he waved them individually like a woman drying her nails. He was singing, Here comes Thumpkins, here comes Thumpkins, here I am, here I am. Very glad to meet you, very glad to meet you. Here I go, here I go. Then he moved closer to Wexler, who looked like he about shit his pants. Here comes Pointer, here comes Pointer. And on like that. He called the other 4 fingers Fuck You, Ring Man, and Pinky. And each time he sang a verse, he drew blood from a different part of Wexler's torso. When he got to the last, the blade extended like a coke fiend's nail, and Freddy gently touched Wexler's eyeball. It's not funny until someone loses an eye, he said, and then he laughed. Then he walked through Wexler, through the wall, and I looked down and saw that the laundry bag wasn't even cut open. Wexler slumped down and he was crying. After a while, he said, "Close my eyes and I'll kiss you." I still don't know if he was talking to me, to God, or to Freddy himself. Folded up in the journal was the front page of the Chicago Tribune for Wednesday, 12 September 1990. Wexler becomes first execution in 28 years. There was a journal entry for the same day. I was watching David Letterman on this small black and white the Rialto provided me. I think my parole office has a fix in somewheres, and there was some comedian on when they cut to live coverage about 10 after midnight. The guy from WMAQ is standing in the field opposite Stateville on the other side of County Road 7. There's a group of wimps lighting candles and another with signs that read Wexler, "Have a free shot on the big house." Behind them you can still see the wreckage from last week's tornado, which demolitioned Crest Hill. I can't help but wonder if Freddy had something to do with it. The tornado. Just like I can't help but wonder if he's the one who killed all them students in Gainesville, Florida. The college kids there partied pretty hard since Bundy fried in the chair. Maybe it was my thinking about him. I might even dozed off there in bed. But when I looked next, Freddy was there in front of everybody. Just like that time in the laundry room. No one else seemed to see him. He walked up to the camera and his metal knives go scratching the lens real slow like. My TV screen cracked down and thick blood like barbecue sauce come dripping down the outside of the set. Then there was that laugh again, like a sewer cover being slid open. I started hyperventilating real bad, and when I was able to focus on the screen again, everything was normal. Wexler was pronounced dead by the Will County coroner at 12:14 a.m. Candid Camera's Alan Funt was on later with Bob Costas. I can only assume that Freddy wants me now that Wexler escaped him in death. It is ironic that Krueger came in Wexler's nightmares, and the Illinois execution law is the equivalent of being put to sleep. I'm staying awake for as long as I can. You bet your ass I am. There was one last entry, but Constant and Christopher showed just then. The IR rap sheet showed that the worst thing Fornix had been incarcerated for was a 19390, concealing a weapon in 1984. Earlier that same year, he'd been a suspect in the dismemberment of a young child found in Graceland Cemetery. They released him on an I bond, Christopher said. Overcrowding at county. What's the sense, you know? He said. Hey, we asked Morissette about this Freddy Krueger you mentioned. Al Morissette had worked on several serial murder cases in Chicago. Most recently, the past winter's Cult of Freaks killings, and he was a bit of an authority on the subject. He said that Krueger slaughtered a bunch of children out in Indiana about 10 years ago. The parents hunted him down and cornered him in a building where he burned to death in the boiler room. Christopher looked at the blood-spattered sill. He's become something of a legend in death, but so has Elvis, so what else is new? The cops would find out the next day that Nick Fornix died from 43 separate, self-inflicted blows to the head. The final entry had told of how the same day of Fornix's apparent suicide, he had again seen this Krueger character, and that Krueger was torturing Wexler, even in death, calling him a poor excuse for a killer, slicing his face over and over, the same gash each time. Said that Freddy told him something like, "You're next, because you smoked Wexler's dick, and you're not original with what you've gotten away with." Well, I'll show him originality, the fucker. Thinks he'll haunt me in life and in death, too? Well, I'll show him something he maybe hadn't considered. Haven't slept in days, so it's like I really don't have much choice. I'm gonna bang my head against the fucking radiator coils until I knock myself in a coma. Let's see him get me then. Let's see big old bad Freddy Krueger get me fucking then. There was more writing, just a line or two, that the cops argued over, whether it was different writing than Fornix's. They dismissed the unreadable last lines as being written in bold slashes by a deluded mind. Rizzy swore the last line said, "Close your eyes, and I'll kill you!" But nobody else could even pretend to have an explanation for what the scratches meant. But then the M.E. had no explanation for the bruises and knife cuts on the deceased's back and shoulders. One might speculate that the deceased had assistants, someone standing behind him, to see that the job was done right. "Close your eyes, and I'll kill you!" Okay, this has been Close Your Eyes and I'll Kiss You, a short story from Freddy's Back, Nightmares on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger's 7 Sweetest Dreams. Instead of doing these in order and making one big upload of them or whatever, a couple of chapters at a time, what I'm going to do is just every now and then I'm going to randomly upload one of these short stories in audiobook form, just as a little surprise here and there, a little bonus upload. Even whenever I'm narrating another book, you'll just see one of these short stories out of here pop up. And once I finish all 7 of the short stories, I will compile them all into one upload. But for now, I think it's going to be kind of cool to be able to throw out one of these 7 short stories just randomly as little bonus uploads. As far as this short story, I actually enjoyed the narrative. I liked the whole journal entry from the bunkmates at prison and everything, and how Freddy went from one guy's dream and then infected into the other guy because he was talked about. And it makes me wonder if these cops and stuff are going to go after. I know there's no continuation of this. That was the end of the story. But I have a feeling that the cops are in for it now. Freddy's has infested their mind now, infected them. Let me know what you guys thought of this short story, and I'll be back very soon with more here at the 80s Slasher Library. This has been your friendly neighborhood 80s Slasher Librarian saying, thanks for listening, and pleasant dreams!